Welcome to another episode of Army Real Talk, an Army Matters podcast from the Association of the United States Army. I am Nzinga Curry, Director of AUSA's Education and Programs, and I am joined by my co-host, Lieutenant Colonel Brittany Lloyd, an AUSA Army Fellow. I am so excited to announce that today's episode marks the beginning of our Adopt a Unit series. This year, we will follow two unique organizations as they prepare and deploy across the world as technical assistants and advisors. This morning, we are talking to the 5th Security Force Assistant Brigade, also known as SFAB, based out of Joint Base Lewis McChord.
I'm also very excited to start this series. Security Force Assistance Brigades are specialized units comprised of highly trained soldiers with the primary mission of advising, assisting, and partnering with allied nations. The 5th SFAB focuses on country in the Pacific region in support of U.S. Army Pacific and Indo-PACOM. Today we will talk to Colonel David Rowland, commander of the 1st Battalion of the 5th Security Forces Assistance Brigade, and his team, Command Sergeant Major Calvin Overway, Major Scott Orr, the operations officer, and Captain LeShaun Smith, a team leader.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way across the other side of the world. Please share a little bit about yourself and your current position, as we are so interested in learning more. Colonel Roland, please kick us off.
My name is Colonel Dave Rowland. I am a graduate of the United States Military Academy and commissioned in the infantry. I've had the opportunity to work in light infantry, airborne, striker, and special operations assignments. I've been stationed in South Korea, Georgia, Italy, Washington, D.C., Kansas, North Carolina, and Texas. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Amy, and we have 2 boys and 2 girls. And like you said, I'm currently serving as the commander of 1st Battalion, 5th SFAB, stationed out in the great Pacific Northwest at Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington.
Thank you, Colonel Roland. Command Sergeant Major Overway.
My name is Command Sergeant Major Overway. I've served in the Army for 24 years as an infantryman. I've had the opportunity to serve in light infantry, mechanized, and striker units. I've been stationed in Alaska, Georgia twice, Colorado, Texas, and Washington State currently. I am married as well to my lovely wife, Amber. I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and I am currently the Battalion Command Sergeant Major for 1st Battalion, 5th SFAB, and have been for almost 2 years.
Thank you, Command Sergeant Major Overlay. Major Orr, we'll kick it to you now.
Hey, good morning, Ms. Curry, Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd. Hey, thank you guys so much for having us on. This is definitely an interesting opportunity for us. My name's Scott Orr. Prior to the SFAB, I was lucky enough to serve in 12 countries and 4 theaters, planning, executing, and supporting special operations. Those range from combat in Afghanistan all the way to operations, activities, and investments in Phase 0, or as people are calling it now, competition below the level of armed conflict. I'm also married. I have an amazing wife named Courtney. She's the foundation of our family service and commitment. She's a nurse, and she's mother to our 2 boys. I'm currently serving as the operations officer here in 1-5 SFAB.
Excellent. Captain Smith, please share a bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is LeShaun Smith. I've been serving in the United States Army for 14 years. I'm a graduate of the Officer Candidate School. I commissioned as an engineer branch officer. I've served in Germany and Hawaii. I'm a graduate of the Maneuver Captain's Career Course. I'm also married. My wife, Stephanie. We have 1 son, Ian. I'm currently serving as a Maneuver Advisor Team Leader in Charlie Company for Team 5132, currently out in Indonesia at this time.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Your career, your path is very impressive. But, gentlemen, I cannot help to see that it's a pattern. From Colonel Roland to Captain Smith, we go from 4, 3, 2, 1 children in your household. I thought that was actually interesting. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about yourself and your career. Again, we are so excited about having you on this podcast. Colonel Roland, please describe a little bit about the Security Force Assistant Brigade and its mission, as well as specialties within your formation.
Sure, that's a great question. And I think the first thing is that we are designed to work with foreign partners and allies, and that's really the foundation of everything we're doing. Is we're designed to not just train ourselves, but train, work, and serve next to our partner forces. So we're purpose-built to advise, support, liaise, and assess our foreign partner units. So that's the foundation of our mission. So those 4 pieces are a core task that we have when working with a partner force. And we do that by having a variety of MOSs or specialties in our small 12-person maneuver advisor teams. They're led by normally an infantry post command captain who is paired with a sergeant first class who has completed their platoon sergeant's time. So the leaders of that organization are experienced in combined arms maneuver. They've demonstrated that they can do the job. And then what we do is we round out the rest of that 12-person team with a variety of staff sergeants and sergeants that are either infantry, military, police, intelligence, an engineer, communications specialist, a medical specialist, a fire support specialist, a mechanic, and logistic professional. So those 12 people bring a lot of skills to our partners because of that diversity and that variety.
Sir, thank you. And as you mentioned, readiness remains a top priority with many of our Army senior leaders, and your mission is highly specific. How does the advisory missions help maintain unit readiness?
Yeah, absolutely. Readiness is our number one priority. But I think we go back and we say the first thing we have to do is we have to get the right people in order to achieve that readiness. We do that by making the SFAB an all-volunteer unit. And we've run an assessment and selection program to make sure we get the right people in the right places. And after they come to a formation, we invest in our people by giving them opportunities to attend what we call career-enhancing schools that they sometimes don't really have the opportunity to attend in their previous units. We also send them to the SFAB specific schooling, specifically the Combat Advisor Training course at Fort Benning. Then we have this group of highly trained non-commissioned officers in their MOSs, and then we put them through some collective training. And they get to practice their skills by deploying and operating with foreign countries, which is a huge learning experience. So once we get the people right, then they get to teach. And when teaching your specific skills to a partner force, you become a much better non-commissioned officer and officer. You have to prepare, study, rehearse, anything you do before working with a partner force. And you can ask LeShaun Smith about that. He's doing that now. And our partners will ask tough questions. So by the teams practicing what they taught their partner force, they're just getting better. And then finally, we learn from our partners as well. We have to be able to learn new things. Sometimes they do things differently than us, and we get to pick up on those best practices. So we're a learning organization, and since we pick the right people, we can learn from our partners and bring those experiences back to the entire Army. So we get to teach, we get to practice in a live environment. Good question.
So that's a very fascinating organization that you are a part of and leading, and I'm excited for our soldiers that get to participate. As a military police officer myself, it's exciting that MP is definitely part of that formation. And I know that all of those specialties play a huge role in partnering with the different nations across the Pacific.
That is so interesting. It is such a heavy and incredible lift. So we really appreciate you enlightening us. I want to move to Major Orr. Major Orr, as the operation officer, how did you prepare for a deployment that takes you to multiple countries with different requirements? What was your pre-deployment training like?
That's a really broad question, so I'll do my best to unpack what I can. I think it's probably important to note up front, I didn't have as much to do with the preparation as you might think when compared to a traditional U.S. Army battalion. And what I mean by that is not that I was somehow not involved or disconnected, but there are a lot of aspects of Phase Zero that are probably more precise and maybe more nuanced than I would guess most people realize. Just to explain what Phase Zero is, in joint doctrine, that's part of the continuum of conflict, and that's the piece that occurs where the Department of Defense's objective is to shape the environment. So an easy example to kind of demonstrate the point of how decentralized these types of things are, we calculated that there's over 100 distinct subtasks that need to be complete for entry into each country. And this is normally accomplished by an entire brigade combat team staff. So in most cases, as Colonel Roland had noted, we only have 12 SFAB advisors or Brown Berets led by a captain to achieve the same outcome. So in terms of pre-mission training, in order to kind of frame it, I'll break it up into three kind of bins. The first one is what I would call graduated operations abroad. The second is training for our worst day. And then the last is decentralization. And so graduated operations abroad, what I mean by that is as a brigade, we were able to send small units to events that much larger Army units had already planned. And they were very helpful. They invited us, and it was a huge benefit to our teams to be able to go to a place that had already been planned. So some examples of that were we had maneuver advising teams from both 1st Battalion and 2nd Battalion 5th SFAB that were able to support U.S. Army and foreign allies and partners in a train-up for combat training center rotations with the Royal Thai Army and the Indonesian Army. Shortly thereafter, we were able, as a battalion, to head over to Thailand with a company, a battalion, field artillery, logistics, and 3 maneuver advising teams for just over 30 days. So the second kind of bin is training for our worst day. And that's a term that I learned from my time in 1st Special Forces Group, kind of across the street from us, who, by the way, actually gave us a lot of help in getting us out the door. So in order to kind of train for our worst day, the brigade and the battalion, we had to pack the schedule. So it was extremely busy. In terms of what we needed to get done to be successful at a combat training center rotation and during this employment, there really wasn't any way to avoid the amount of things that we had to jam into the schedule. We had a lot of people that we knew we would have to support, for example, USER PAC, Indo-PACOM, and then the other joint units that are out here in the operating environment, to name a few. So what the brigade did for us is they organized a training event that they called Vanguard Focus. And to be honest, they were able to throw so much at us so quickly that they sort of beat the brakes off us. And that was honestly a good thing because we had some NCOs from first group on site that helped evaluate, coach, teach, and mentor us along the way. And it was just a few short weeks after that that we found ourselves with joint readiness training. So I think as a unit, based on that schedule and what I just laid out, we felt like we'd come out the GRTC, given it our best effort, and then based on the feedback and the incredible level of effort from the OC teams and 1-2 Stryker Brigade combat team, we felt that we were able to grow a lot. So lastly here, before I describe what decentralization means to us, I kind of want to put those operations abroad and the training in context. So a maneuver SFAB battalion has around 175 berets, and we kind of just went through how we had maps all the way to the battalion involved in several overseas operations, a brigade train-up, and a CTC rotation in only about 6 months' time. We followed this by pretty much immediately loading out for this force package employment. So understanding that the Army is a team sport, we realized that the only way we could achieve any real degree of success was that we needed to get the teams to own as much of the problems as we possibly could and at the lowest level. So this meant that we had to decentralize. And that was honestly a very hard thing to do because we had to become more disciplined in how we attacked the problems. We had to push down as much as we could until it was uncomfortable all the way down to the teams. And then we had to execute a bottom-up kind of approval process to get out the door. And what I mean by that is really they had to develop plans at the team level that would encompass everything that was happening for their security force assistance mission for a whole country. And they didn't have very long to do that. And then by working the approvals from the bottom up, we were able to incorporate all the experiences from the United States Embassy teams that were out in the environment, other joint force units, and then we were able to back brief senior mission commanders like General LaCamera and General Taylor to make sure that we were going to be able to do what they needed us to do out there. So all in all, we were able to get just under 90% of what we planned to the execution stage. And so all that, to wrap it up for me, is to say that I was incredibly proud and honored to be part of an organization that could get so much done in such a short amount of time.
Excellent and great unpacking. You spoke about graduated operations abroad, training for your worst day, and centralization. I think that indeed exhibits readiness. So good information. Thank you for sharing. Command Sergeant Major, I understand there is a rigorous qualification and selection process for SFAB, and Major Orr spoke a bit about his honor of being part of this team. So I would love to hear about you and your perspective about how soldiers are selected and how it differs from a traditional organization.
So the main difference between how soldiers are selected for an SFAB and how soldiers are really assigned to traditional units is exactly that. In traditional units, a vacancy is identified and Human Resources Command or HRC fills that vacancy when it becomes apparent to them that there's a need to send another soldier to that job. But in the SFAB, it's a little bit different. So we have a recruiting team in the SFAC that goes around to installations and really kind of spreads the word about what SFAB is and garner a lot of interest from soldiers that are interested in kind of stepping outside of their comfort zone. And when they do that, they submit an application to join the SFAB, and the recruiting team does an initial screening to ensure that the soldiers in their application meet the basic requirements to join the SFAB. After that, the soldiers will be given a date to attend the SFAC assessment and selection, which is held at Fort Benning, Georgia. During the assessment and selection, the soldiers are evaluated on their physical fitness, mental agility, and ability to work as a member of a team. The soldiers will conduct a review of their performance packet with the cadre of the assessment and selection program, and they'll receive feedback on their strengths and weaknesses as it pertains to their respective career field and their current rank. At the conclusion of the assessment and selection process, the soldiers will then attend a board where the panel members consist of a current battalion commander, a command sergeant major, and a senior NCO, which is usually a first sergeant from one of the SFAB battalions. The board will then evaluate the soldier to ensure that they have the qualities that would make them a good candidate to be a member of an advising team. During that evaluation, they're looking at the feedback that the cadre members have on their performance throughout the assessment. And they're going to also look at the outcome of the peer evaluations that every soldier will go through in their teams as they go through assessment and selection, and then a review of their packet as well. Additionally, it's an opportunity for the board members to have a conversation with the respective candidates and ask them questions, and then also just get a good idea of the candidate themselves. And then that also affords the candidate an opportunity to ask questions of leadership in the SFAB. At the completion of the board, the members of that board will then determine whether or not the soldier is a good fit for the SFAB. And assuming that the packet looks good, the board went well, peer evaluations identifying that they can work as a member of a small team, those look good, then the board members will make a determination to hire that soldier into the SFAB. After that is done, then it's a little bit of a waiting game for the soldier. They will receive orders to join an SFAB. And that's kind of how the process works. And as I stated before, that's almost polar opposite of how a soldier is assigned to a traditional unit versus how a soldier volunteers and then is assessed, selected, and assigned to an SFAB.
Sergeant Major, thank you for that. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate the information about the specifics of joining an SFAB. Having worked in an organization out of USAPAC that trained and partnered with many different countries and partner nations, that was definitely one of my best assignments, and had the most fun and learned the most while working with different countries and being in different locations. One of the many joys of being in the military, and specifically the Army, is we partner with the world's largest forces out there. And with that, I'd like to turn to Captain Smith. As a team leader, as Major Orr mentioned, you have to prepare for missions that are usually performed by much larger formations. Can you tell us about your team and what you guys have done to prepare for the missions within the Pacific?
Yeah, so I'm one of the maneuver advisory team leaders for 5132. So I have a fully manned 12-person team that, like in larger formations, still has to perform the same additional duties in order to perform the same functions. So with that, the first thing we had to do in order to prepare for this employment was build a team. So there was numerous team building activities to get the small unit to know each other that was spread out the last 6 months. And like Major Orr said, we did do this preparation in the last 6 months. So we started it off with individual training. So that meant soldiers going to mission essential schools. And then also there's very specific equipment that we utilize with our partner force that helps facilitate interoperability, communication, and battlefield situational awareness that the advisors had to get trained on before employing it. So as the soldiers in the first of the 6 months went through that, we then progressed to collective training. So we conducted within the brigade level 2 large collective exercises, Vanguard Storm and Vanguard Focus. And in those collective exercises, we did situational training exercises that included engaging with State Department officials, preparing for deployment operations and loadout activities, conducting a link up with a partner force and kind of simulating those challenges of language barriers, cultural barriers. And then, like Major Orr said, preparing for that worst day of being with our partner force when a conflict breaks out. And we did that internally within the brigade before going to the JRTC at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and then conducting all that training at a full speed scenario with our partner force of 1st Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, and putting all that equipment to the test and putting all those individual skills and those team skills and that equipment training that we did all together, make sure when we did get here and now that we're doing this for real, we tested the equipment, we tested some techniques. And especially with the non-commissioned officers, it really builds their confidence, being able to speak and work with someone who's speaking a different language. So learning to do that with body language. And even though we're in a different country with a different partner force, we find that we have some commonalities. But we did all that in the last 6 months. So it was a challenge, but from a good selection of motivated young soldiers, it's been a great experience getting everything ready.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this information is very, very interesting, and we thank you so much for your service. But I want to shift a bit and talk about family. With AUSA supporting the total Army to include Army families, I would like to discuss a bit about the deployment and its impact on families. Colonel Roland, please tell us about the family support system that has worked well for your unit.
That's a great question because soldiers and family readiness group, that's what allows us to do our mission overseas and in training. They are truly the bedrock of our organization that allows us to do all the advise, assess, liaise, and support activities that we do with our partners. Now, what we have learned through COVID is that readiness is something that you build as you interact with families. COVID, just like any other organization, has stopped us from being able to get together physically. But what we did learn is social events actually build readiness, both on the professional side between soldiers, but also between family members as they get to know each other. So in our case, we were limited to interact with each other because of the COVID environment. And that was particularly difficult as we built our unit and COVID happened right in the middle of our buildup. So COVID has been especially tough for us because it happened in the middle of our training cycle and our build phase of our brand new unit. And what we did find is that events really build readiness. And that's both on the professional side as soldiers and officers and NCOs get to know each other and folks in their unit, but also between family members as they get to know each other and they're going to rely on each other when the formation is gone. But right before COVID hit, we were able to have an open house at our brand new headquarters building. Got a lot of families there, a lot of kids running around. That was great. We did a little bit of virtual hail and farewell, hosted some coffee groups for the spouses. We were able to do a Halloween trick or treat within the COVID guidelines, which was a lot of fun. And we did an Easter egg hunt with the Easter bunny and eggs all over the place. So the families were able to have a great time. But like I said, the soldier and family readiness group, that's the foundation that allows us to do everything that we are able to do, not only in FIP SFAB, but as an Army.
Excellent. So glad to hear the families are informed, supported, and how they absolutely support the unit. So thank you. Command Sergeant Major, anything else that we should discuss? Any final thoughts that we could share with our listeners before we end this podcast?
I'd say my final thoughts are, as the SFAB gains visibility in the big Army, the one thing that I would say is encourage all soldiers, if they want to challenge themselves to get outside of their comfort zone of their day-to-day routine and duties that they are currently going through, they can challenge themselves by looking for opportunities like the SFAB to broaden themselves and really be surrounded by high-quality NCOs and officers that enjoy coming to work every day, and they know what the mission is, and they are fully invested in mission success for not just the organization, but the partners that we partner with in the regions that we end up getting our teams into.
Thank you all, Colonel Rowland, Command Sergeant Major Overway, Major Orr, and Captain Smith for joining us today for this Adopt a Unit podcast. We are so excited to be joined by the 1st Battalion of the 5th Security Force Assistant Brigade, and we look forward to catching up with you in the future. Thank you. Thank you again for all that you do and for your service.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Army Matters podcast on iTunes and everywhere podcasts are found. The Army Matters podcast series is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at AUSA.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission to educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and our supporters of a strong national defense. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. Have a great Army Day. Hua.